Hello and welcome to another edition of your favorite parliamentary news magazine program on television, The Chamber, right here on Citi TV. My name is Duke Mensah Opoku. It promises to be exciting, riveting on this edition. We'll be back after the break. Stay with us. You're welcome back from the break. This is still The Chamber. It's been a week where many expected that the controversial electronic transfer levy would be taken on the floor of the House, but a couple of factors, including the absence of the Speaker from the jurisdiction, among others, have compelled leaders of the House to continue to consult on the issue without necessarily getting into the mechanics of this e-levy and its passage. For more on what is expected or what has transpired on the floor of Parliament this week, here's the recap. At the commencement of proceedings, the Clerk of Parliament, Cyril Otinsia, announced to the House the unavoidable absence of the Speaker from the jurisdiction.
Respectfully, I have to inform the House that the Right Honourable Speaker is unavoidably absent, and in accordance with Standing Order 13.2, the Honourable First Deputy Speaker shall perform the duties and exercise the authority of Mr. Speaker in relation to all proceedings of the House until Mr. Speaker resumes the chair.
Later, the Minority Leader Haruna Idrisu demanded clarity from the majority as to when the electronic transfer levy would be tabled for debate.
On this important matter, there can be no surprises. So we want the leader of government business to lead us through. When will it be? If it's to be reintroduced, a new bill, or Article 106, the bill is gazetted for us to know, or we are continuing wanting under Article 106 to suspend our standing order to take it as a matter of urgency. Mr. Speaker, members need to know, because on this matter, as we have publicly said, we want to stand with the public in our opposition and rejection of the bill. We don't want to be taken by surprises.
The Majority Leader Duke Mensah Opoku, in response, indicated that a determination would be made after consultation and that the levy would be passed in the interest of the public.
Even before walking in here, the Minority Leader, who is the ranking member of the Bills Committee, asked about the status, and I told him that we'll come to some determination, even though it's been advertised for tomorrow. So you look at the supplementary, the provisional order paper, you will see it advertised for tomorrow. But even that, I told him that we need to confer on that, because to all intents and purposes, we may not be able to do it tomorrow. So he asked whether that was an assurance, and I said to him that that is double assurance. That certainly it will not come up tomorrow, but we'll determine when together. I have given you that assurance. So it's not as if anybody wants to spring any surprise. It will have to be decided on, and I will signal him, and then we agree on a common date.
Following the recent coup in Burkina Faso, a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the House, Al-Hassan Abdallah Idi, is calling for a decisive approach from sub-regional leaders to halt the trend of military takeovers.
What is happening in the sub-region, especially when Ghana is very closer to Burkina Faso, we should be worried. We should be worried that even currently as we speak, Boko, which is not far from Côte d'Ivoire, Burkina Faso, is experiencing some skirmishes. What is the causal agent to this? And going forward, what benefits do people derive in doing that?
The African continent within the last 9 months has witnessed a number of coups from countries such as Chad, Mali, Guinea, Sudan and Burkina Faso, with the recent being a failed coup attempt in Guinea-Bissau. The worrying development generated a statement from the ranking member on the Foreign Affairs Committee of Parliament, Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa, in the House on Wednesday. He urged the ECOWAS and African Union to institute proactive measures in dealing with the trend.
The only real solution to the coup epidemic, as the UN Secretary General calls it, cannot be AU and ECOWAS sanctions. African leaders need an urgent, bold and robust Marshall Plan to address regional insecurity acute unemployment, lack of opportunities for the youth, marginalization, corruption, nepotism, proliferation of arms, insurgencies, dictatorships, economic mismanagement, foreign exploitation, and clueless leadership. Africa's version of democracy, which has been a sham at best in many jurisdictions, and has rather produced a political and economic elite beholden to nepotism, cronyism, corruption, opulence, and high-handedness, often laced with blatant disregard for the rule of law, cannot be kept in place. Mr. Speaker, it is time for the African Union and other sub-regional bodies such as ECOWAS to institute an independent monitoring and evaluation system that assesses the democratic health, stability, and economic well-being of member states for frank peer review as a proactive measure to forestall more coups.
Earlier, the minority raised concern about the failure of the Minister of Education, Dr. Yawosei Educhum, for the second time to attend to questions in Parliament pertaining to his outfit. But the Majority Chief Whip, Frank Anodompre, assured that the minister would be available on February 9 to answer the questions filed by the legislators.
If you read the minister's letter, the last paragraph, it reads, Honorable Minister will be engaged in an official assignment. Why? Coming to Parliament and responding to Parliament is an equally important official assignment. Where is he? And then you bring us a letter only in the morning when you are supposed to be here to answer questions. Where is the Minister for Education? You don't write to us in the morning. You bring a letter in the morning when you are unavoidably absent.
I assure the leader that we will do the needful. I thought that we had had an agreement at conclave, but be it as it may, we will assure all the members involved. And Speaker, I also want to guarantee that I've engaged the minister who has assured that the date communicated will be respected, and he will come to the chamber and do the needful.
The National Democratic Congress Upper West Caucus of the House also addressed the media and called on the government to possibly reinstate the military security detail of the Speaker of Parliament.
We seek, therefore, to urge the government to give adequate response to the worrying situation by the myriads of the public to satisfy the complete security needs of the Speaker, if even it will require the reinstatement of the military team that had been withdrawn unilaterally by government. It is our expectation that matters of security must be handled expeditiously with adequate consultation and discussions away from public concerns.
Following a meeting between the Ghana Airport Company and the Roads and Transport Committee of the House over the operation of a private jet terminal by Magdan Aviation, a member of the committee, Yusuf Jaja, disclosed some details of the deliberations to the media.
From the meeting, what we have gathered is that, and from the Ghana Civil Aviation and Ghana Airport, I can't foresee Magdan Aviation industry operating commercially in the next 1 to 2 years.
Wow.
Yes, because as we speak now, he doesn't have the license. It's still now going through the process to acquire the commercial license, and it takes some time to be able to comply with the process to be able to acquire a commercial license to operate. What we're told is having now is the private jet licensing, which he has been given 3 months to operate, and as we speak now, the 3 months has elapsed. So as we speak now, it doesn't have even the private jet license and authority to even operate. I have suggested to my chairman and the committee to also get the Magdan aviation industry to listen to their side as well. But something happened. If you look at we were fortunate as a member of the committee, members of the committee, to lay our hands on some documents. On one breath, you will see the Ghana Civil Aviation Authority or the Ghana Airport Company communicating to Magdan shipping industry. On the other hand, you see some communications communicating to Magdan group of companies and to other communications to Magdan Aviation Company. We try, these are technical and legal. Which company are you dealing with? So these are all things they will have to sanitize. If you say you started with Magdan Shipping and along the line migrated to Magdan Aviation, we need to see correspondence to those effects. They are here to produce those things. But the minister said he's going to sanction the Magdan industry at least for defying their orders and what have you. So a meeting will start next week to see to that.
On the floor of the House, a loan of 230 million euros to finance the construction of a bridge over the Volta River at Adoso Amanfrom was approved. The chairman of the Finance Committee, Kweku Kwating, presented a report of the committee on the agreement. This week on the From the Floor segment, we're bringing you two different offerings. First off is a conversation with members of parliament on a survey that was launched this week by the Ghana Center for Democratic Development, CDD Ghana, which estimates the cost of politics, the cost of running for parliamentary elections in this country at $693,000, the equivalent of some 4 million Ghana cedis over the past election cycle. It also pegs the cost of running a presidential campaign from internal primaries to the big stage itself at $100 million. But the major stakeholders in this process are the MPs themselves, the members of parliament. What do they think about the findings which has been uncovered in this latest CDD research findings? Of course, I spoke to a number of members of parliament, 4 of them, 2 males, 2 females, 2 of them from the majority, 2 of them from the minority, on what they make of these findings. Also, we've curated for you an interesting debate that unfolded on the floor of the House after a statement was made by ranking member on the Foreign Affairs Committee, Samuel Okujeto-Ablakwa, on the recent spate of coup d'etats in the West African sub-region and its impact on stability and peace in the sub-region. So these are offerings for you this week on the From the Floor segment. Stay with us. This is The Chamber. Welcome back from the break. This is From the Floor segment. One of the issues we're exploring this week is the CDD survey, which says that averagely parliamentary candidates spend $693,000, the equivalent of some 4 million Ghana cedis, to prosecute a parliamentary campaign to get into parliament. I'll be interviewing a couple of members of parliament to pick their thoughts on this survey, whether it's true or not, what has been their experience with fundraising for political campaigning. So the Honorable Ahinkwaya Frederick is MP for German North, and he'll be telling us what this experience has been. So CDD says you need $693,000 averagely to get into parliament. What was your own experience?
CD equivalent, what would be that?
4 million Ghana cedis.
4 million Ghana cedis. Wow. I see this as a strange a product of the research, because taking myself into consideration, I was a classroom teacher before coming to parliament, and then if I should even look at the salary I was taking there, if I should compute the 12 months and then multiply by the number of years that I even taught, I taught for 17 good years as a professional teacher before coming here. Where was I going to raise that money from? I can tell you my coming here was purely on goodwill. I can confidently knock my chest and say I campaigned with a lesser amount before coming here. I didn't have the resources, and it's just some few benevolent people and organizations that came to my aid. And physically, what I had in my hand was less than 100,000 Ghana cedis.
So you are saying you spend less than 100,000?
Yeah, it's the truth that I'm saying. That is what brought me here. I know the demands. Now, as I've become an MP, maybe to re-seek an election, it is going to take a different dimension. Initially, people knew my profession, my background. So at times there's that sympathy that, oh, this is a fresher, let us give him the chance and see what he has for us. But once you enter the house here, there's an impression out there that, oh, he has it. So once we are here, I know the demands in the next election will increase. and maybe the experience there will be different from what I saw earlier. But I think their figure is too outrageous, although it is demanding. To be in Parliament is demanding. Even whilst we are here, the weekly demands, funerals, marriage ceremonies, invitations are unbearable. But we still manage within our means to do all those things. So to me, the money is too outrageous.
A straight question. Did you spend as much as $693,000 on your campaign to from primaries up to the general election to get into Parliament?
I'm actually quite shocked. Where from that amount? It seems a bit extreme. I would say I haven't actually calculated what I spent, but I would believe that over the period that I campaigned, probably spent about 100,000 or
cedis.
Dollars. Like if you're
100,000, the city equivalent of this is the city equivalent of $100,000.
Yes. That was I campaigned over a 2-year period, so I would say, it probably would add up to about that much.
And is that not worrying? Increasingly, the survey also found out that most of the people who got these funds, some of the funding came from illicit sources, galamsey, oil bunkering, and other forms of financing, money, all of that get into our politics. And you are telling us, confirming that a conservative estimate spent about $100,000.
Like I said, I campaigned over a 2-year period plus. I started way back in 2019, and I am part of an organization called the Hope Campaign, which has a lot of champs in there. So I'm even calculating those who gave me like nose masks and stuff like that. People who helped to do my street campaigns, helped to buy T-shirts for my primaries, cleanup exercises we did, donations we did, cement we bought. There are so many different things we did. So that is why I'm saying I haven't really calculated it, but over a 2-year period, there were a lot of activities, and I would estimate that we probably spent about that much. Yeah.
Is that sustainable? You have gone through the process. Many are calling for a way to reform our politics in terms of funding and financing. Some say, hey, if you want to be in politics, you have to be resourceful. Others are saying that increasingly it's going above the roof, and very soon we may have criminals coming into our politics because they just can't afford.
Truthfully, I think that yes, the monetization of politics is getting worse, and that is because we are assuming that most constituents believe that people who are elected into power have a bit more than they have. They are the ones you touch, and you are able to go and lobby them for support and all of that. So when they are in trouble, they feel that you are the one they should come to. So especially when there are emergencies and people are in trouble, let's say you call somebody that you are who is helping your campaign, for instance, and the person is being kicked out of their house because they don't have money for rent. What do? You don't tell the person, I don't have it. And when you come from a constituency like mine, which is Greater Accra, our daily expenditure is quite high. Cost of rent, cost of living is very high. And if somebody comes to you, whatever they would probably be asking in the village is very different from what someone in Greater Accra will be asking for. And on top of that, we are a lot of low income. We have over 60% low income people. Yes, it's a very, very serious situation.
They found that averagely it costs a politician some $693,000, the equivalent of 4 million Ghana cedis, to run parliamentary primaries to get into parliament. Did $100 million to run for president. This is the finding of the survey, which captured your region out of the 4 regions, 4 out of 16 regions. Central region is part. You've done this for a while. You should be going into your 4th term or so as member of parliament. Any truth in these findings?
Wow, you said CDD.
Yes.
I don't think it's true. In fact, it's not true. Not that I don't think it's true. It's not true. We can't spend. But Ghana, do we have all that money sitting in this country?
But that's how much. Over a period, over a campaign period, that's how much is calculated.
It's not true. Yes, we spend money. We spend more than we can afford. We go out of our way, but we don't spend that much. It's not true.
How much did you spend?
I cannot calculate it. As I'm standing here, I'm doing programs. I'm meeting my queen mothers. I'm meeting my chiefs. I'm meeting my clergy and all of that. So it's all part of money being spent. But it will not be up to that amount. No, that one, it's a bit too much. I think we should be a bit realistic, and we shouldn't make politics all about money. Sometimes some of us, we win because of the relationship we have with the people, because of who we are, and because of, how people can even approach us. It is not always about money. Honestly, I'll tell you, it's not always about money. At least I am an example of people who bring money in boxes, and they will not be able to defeat Opoku. So it's not all about money. And I don't believe anybody spends that much. We spend money, yes, but like you spend money for everything. Even this thing you are doing, are you not spending money for your bad?
One of your colleagues told me they spent, and this is in the Bono region, he says he spent 100,000 cedis. One of your colleagues in the Greater Accra region says she spent around $100,000. Wow. Conservatively, around which figure would you peg yours around?
No, I wouldn't want to peg any figure, but I would advise them that they should be regular in their constituency. They should have relationship with their constituents. They wouldn't spend that much. I am an example. I don't spend that much. Once you have that good relationship with them, you wouldn't spend. I think they are exaggerating. They are making us look like something I don't know, but it's not true.
But the survey doesn't necessarily say that these are monies you pay out of your pocket. There are financiers and sponsors, and unfortunately, some of these sponsors get monies from Galamsey, from oil bunkering, from all sorts of fraudulent activities. The survey also found out that, and they want to sponsor politicians so that they can protect them from the illegal activities they are engaged in. Is it something that is worrying?
Yeah. For that, it's worrying. I would say for that, I'll never be able to say it's not true. That I am sure it can be true, and I'm sure it's true. If anything that you are doing, you are spending a certain amount of money, a huge amount of money, it will come from places where these monies are coming from, trading in all of those things, including Galamsey. But honestly, I haven't experienced it. Nobody has come to me with money from Galamsey saying he's supporting me. You understand?
People come with money saying they support you.
Oh, yeah.
Support you.
For instance, when I'm cooking for my BEC, people will come like, I'm giving you 1 cow and maybe 50 bags of rice and 20,000 to support you. I'm doing a good job. Or I'm doing Christmas party. Rabina will say, I'm sponsoring with everything, so just do the food. I get things like that because I do a lot. Even I'm meeting my queen mothers, God willing, on Sunday. I've gotten somebody giving me 12 yards of cloth, 200 pieces of that.
In your campaign, parliamentary primaries, equivalent of 4 million Ghana cedis, presidential primaries, campaign to get into parliament, and for the presidency, that's around $100 million. True?
Wow, I'll be dishonest to say we don't spend money to come to parliament. We run with cars for our campaign, so obviously we have to buy petrol. We have a team that we move with. Obviously they have to eat, but I'm not too sure of the amounts. I've not read the entire CDD report, and I don't know the criteria they used in coming to this conclusion. But in my case, it was way below the amounts being mentioned. I didn't spend anything close to the amount being mentioned at all.
Some of your colleagues have endeavored to go into some figures. One of your colleagues from the Bono region, which wasn't wasn't captured as part of the survey, but he said he spent around 100,000 cedis. One of your colleagues in the Greater Accra region says she spent in the region of about $100,000. Yes, to get into the house. Have you done some conservative estimate?
I have, but I don't intend to disclose it.
Why? In the interest of transparency? I don't. Or you don't want your constituents to know you are that rich?
I don't intend to disclose. Of course, I didn't use my personal money for the campaign. I had friends, family members contributing to the campaign. But I can tell you for a fact that I did not spend anything close to the amount being mentioned by the CDD. I don't know. You kept saying that they've spoken to some colleagues of ours in coming to this particular conclusion. They did not speak to me in any way, and so I don't know about that. But I can tell you I didn't spend that much.
But is it worrying? Is it a source for concern? Some make the argument that as a politician, you have to be resourceful. You should be able to raise money and all of that. Some are also saying that increasingly this is making our politics a preserve for the rich, and it could also be an avenue for the introduction of money from illicit sources, galamsey money from oil bunkering and others, which they also identified in their research.
It can be worrying, and it has the potential to spill over to corruption and all that. But well, bro, in my case, I can tell you, I never had any money from any galamseyers or people involved in any kind of illicit drugs or anything of that sort. So it's difficult for me to speak to that. But yes, it has the potential to breed corruption. And can you imagine if somebody sponsored your campaign? You come to power, you are made the minister, the person approaches you for a contract, the person does not even qualify. It's difficult to turn the person down. So yes, it has the potential to breed corruption. And this brings to fore this issue about political party funding and whether governments should set aside some money to fund political parties. I'm happy about the discussion. I'm sure in the coming days, the CDD report will open up discussions on this particular matter. But in my case, I can still confirm that I didn't spend anything close to that amount of money.
To make this important statement on a matter that troubles and frightens all of us, the alarming resurgence of a new wave of coup d'etats in our sub-region. Mr. Speaker, within the short space of 9 months, West Africa has witnessed successful coups in Mali, Guinea, Burkina Faso, and a fourth apparent failed attempt in Guinea-Bissau. Only yesterday, the 1st of February 2022, during a cabinet meeting and which Guinea-Bissau President Umaru Sissoco Embalo said has left many soldiers dead. The coup jinx does not appear to be an entirely West African phenomenon. Niger, Sudan...
Honorable members, there are so many meetings in this chamber. Please, let's listen to the statement.
Mr. Speaker, the coup jinx does not appear to be an entirely West African phenomenon. Niger, Sudan, and Zimbabwe have registered themselves on the list of infamy in recent years. Numerous other attempts across multiple African jurisdictions have been recorded. Mr. Speaker, since 1999, Africa hasn't experienced 4 successful coups in 1 calendar year, as we saw in 2021, just last year. This is what has led to grave concerns with United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres describing the situation as, quote, an epidemic of coup d'etats, unquote. Mr. Speaker, the tidal wave of coup d'etats set off by the Togolese soldiers in 1963 seemed to roll on unabated, even in 2022. Since the first coup on the African continent, there has been an average of 25 coups every decade between the 1960s and 90s. One would have thought that with the advent of the New World Order, these democratic setbacks would have become a feature of the past. A world order which places premium on democracy, good governance, rule of law, respect for human rights, strong institutions, and the increasing use of economic and political sanctions on those who falter. Ironically, it is this new Western-backed world order that we find coups very much in fashion, particularly in West Africa. West Africa has been a hotbed of these coups. The sub-region kicked off the coup culture on the African continent and has so far held the dubious record of maintaining the lead in coups. The recent successful coup being the January 23, 2022 Burkina Faso military takeover. So far, Mr. Speaker, it seems that apart from Cabo Verde, every single country in West Africa has experienced a coup. Mr. Speaker, there has been a false sense of transition to stable democratic order within the West Africa sub-region. But any neutral observer will admit that the coups, like our collective underdevelopment, have always been part of us, even if the guns appear to have been silenced somewhat in the 1990s, when hope was emerging about a refreshing democratization wave. Mr. Speaker, ECOWAS, the sub-regional supranational body, has adopted a high-handed post-facto approach, including individual and collective sanctions, border closures, suspension of membership, and threats of military invasion in dealing with these occurrences. Yet, Mr. Speaker, these measures have not served as adequate deterrent. The forces pushing these military adventures seem greater than the potential punishment or risks they are likely to contend with. Mr. Speaker, there is widespread global consensus that liberal democracy is facing a crisis of confidence. Freedom House's 2018 Freedom in the World report found democratic declines in 71 countries, while only 35 registered improvements. The Economist Intelligence Unit has reported similar consistent declines in democracy over the last few years. Those scholars agree that democracy is sick across the world. There is general convergence that Africa's situation is most severe. The erosion of Africa's democratic gains has been far-reaching. The African Center for Strategic Studies has observed that since 2015, leaders of 13 African countries have, quote, evaded or overseen the further weakening of term limit restrictions that have been in place, unquote. In addition, many elections on the continent have not been free, fair, and credible. Frequent elections have also not guaranteed genuine respect for democratic tenets. Mr. Speaker, a careful study of the Ibrahim Index of African Governance, published by the Mo Ibrahim Foundation, reveals how poorly many African countries, especially those affected by coups, are faring in the following indicators: security and rule of law, participation, rights and inclusion, foundations for economic opportunity, and human development indices. Mr. Speaker, an appraisal of Africa's performance in fighting corruption, when we come to analyze the Corruption Perception Index published by Transparency International, is even more depressing. What we see is stagnation at best and deterioration at worst. 44 out of the 21 African countries assessed in 2021 by the CPI scored below 50 out of a total score of 100. Only Seychelles, Cabo Verde, and Botswana offer the continent some hope. Mr. Speaker, the African situation is exacerbated by worsening terrorism and violent extremism in the sub-region, following, in particular, the chaotic overthrow of Colonel Muammar al-Gaddafi of Libya in 2011. Since then, sophisticated weapons have found their way into the hands of rebels and terrorists who have presented a formidable challenge to African governments. The Tuareg rebels, Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, and Boko Haram are growing stronger and annexing more territory day by day. It is instructive to note that last month's coup makers in Burkina Faso cited the worsening security situation as a major reason for the coup. They claim to be responding to the massacre of some 50 Burkinabe soldiers in the Soum province by extremists and the government's failure to better equip the army. Mr. Speaker, what is even more intriguing is the popular support and massive jubilation which these coups are greeted with by the African people. A clear paradox of the people's democracy versus popular coups. Mr. Speaker, as a consummate Democrat, I am convinced coups are not a panacea to Africa's hydra-headed and intractable socio-economic challenges. That said, we must all concede that the promised democratic dividend has remained largely elusive on the African continent. The only real solution to the coup epidemic, as the UN Secretary General calls it, cannot be AU and ECOWAS sanctions. African leaders need an urgent, bold, and robust Marshall Plan to address regional insecurity, acute unemployment, lack of opportunities for the youth, marginalization, corruption, nepotism, proliferation of arms, insurgencies, dictatorships, economic mismanagement, foreign exploitation, and clueless leadership. Africa's version of democracy, which has been a sham at best in many jurisdictions, and has rather produced a political and economic elite beholden to nepotism, cronyism, corruption, opulence, and high-handedness, often laced with blatant disregard for the rule of law, cannot be kept in place. Mr. Speaker, it is time for the African Union and other sub-regional bodies such as ECOWAS to institute an independent monitoring and evaluation system that assesses the democratic health, stability, and economic well-being of member states for frank peer review as a proactive measure to forestall more coups. This independent assessment must be conducted regularly by credible African CSOs or foundations in a transparent and scientific manner. Their findings must be made public to both enrich the African democratic discourse and also assure citizens that their leaders are paying attention to what really matters to them. This will shed the perception that AU ECOWAS leaders have become a big boys club only interested in regime protection. Mr. Speaker, the history of coups in Africa teaches us that coups are very contagious and tend to have a domino effect. The horizon doesn't look good. We cannot continue with mere sanction regimes after the fact, and which clearly have deterred no one. I therefore appeal, Mr. Speaker, particularly to Ghana's President and Chair of ECOWAS, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, to consider this preventive and preemptive approach, which I have humbly suggested.
I read about Burkina Faso, and if you look at the economic indices and the progress Burkina Faso as a country was making, then suddenly we have this. So I tend to wonder if in our build globally engaging social engineering, we may have to amend this template that reflect whether a country is doing well or not. Speaker, more often than not, the writings are always on the wall, and the calls are clear. So leadership and the ruling class will have to pay heed to these calls. But I dare say that we need to be careful not to be glorifying coup d'etat. I hear people say that, oh, if the masses, the calls of the masses are not heeded to, poverty, which is an issue, is not tracked, then we are preparing a grounds for coup d'etat. No, it can never be the case. As long as a continent we've agreed to go by the tenets of democracy, we should be ready and prepared to subject ourselves to it. I recall when the Ghanaian people were crying for free SHS. When the Ghanaian people were crying for free SHS, the NPP did not resort to a coup d'etat. We waited and bid our time and waited for the appropriate time and got you out through the ballot box. That should be the narrative. That anybody who believes that he has a better alternative, anybody who believes he has a better alternative should be patient and wait for the appropriate time. Speaker, we are all professing various counsels to the continent. But we must also look within. Speaker, it cannot be justified under any circumstance that members of parliament will reduce arguments, intellectual arguments, to fisticuffs. And we have people who are targeting the seat of the speaker. It cannot be the case. And if we continuously engage in that, we are preparing the grounds for the unfortunate. Speaker, so it's high time we also reflect. This parliament, and growing up as a young student leader, I have never witnessed MPs going after the speaker's seat. I have never seen that. Both sides, we need to reflect. The ruling class must reflect, and we are part of the ruling class. You cannot at one time or at one hand condemn coup d'etat, and at another hand surreptitiously and physically trying to attack the Speaker of Parliament. For me, that is a form of a coup d'etat. Anybody who engages in fisticuffs in Parliament here is fueling and facilitating coup d'etat and must be condemned in no uncertain terms.
Honorable Speaker, I do not share the view that when a government which is duly elected by the people is underperforming, the solution is to have an overthrow of that government by the armed forces. I don't share that view at all. I share the view, with the greatest of respect, that the underperformance of a government, even in the areas of corruption and what we want to talk about, nepotism, and all the institutions are filled by friends and the rest of it, should not be a necessary reason for a coup d'etat. We know that everything begins and ends at the ballot box. That's the history of the so-called civilized countries that we're looking up to. There have been very, very serious challenges in America. Even the Watergate scandal during President Nixon's time and the rest of it. But the armed forces of America did not overthrow the Constitution of the United States of America and for that matter, booted out the government of the day. I wish to submit, with the greatest of respect, that I believe it is the sanity of permitting democratic governments to perform, for better or for worse, for a long stretch of time that has accounted for the kind of economic development that we've seen with, for instance, America and the United Kingdom. But where the constitutional journey is punctuated by coup d'etats, Honorable Speaker, you can see that somebody believes he's a savior. And you see the masses sometimes very excited that a government has been booted out. Because to the ordinary person, every problem that is going through is attributed to the government. And the euphoria of welcoming lawless men as heads of states and the rest of them, eventually, when you do a cost-benefit analysis and do serious economic analysis, as half the time, it is more of trouble than development. The history of even this country of ours will show. But one of the things I heard, which I find very interesting, and I want to share with the House, is that somebody diagnosed the problems of Africa this way, that through the vehicle called coup d'etat, we come to this scenario that in Africa, every coup d'etat is simply described as another madman has taken over the asylum. I feel that is a very caustic language for anybody to have said. The coup d'etat is simply another madman has taken over the asylum. And I believe that should not define our progress as a people. What is very, very, very important also is the hard fact that we have not come to appreciate democracy as it works. We need to deepen our democratic ethos. We need to let people understand that it is only democracy and the rule via the ballot box which has a future for any people. At the end of the day, when you have a coup d'etat, Honorable Speaker, you have this scenario. There is no parliament where laws are critically, in fact, at that point, bills are critically evaluated and the people's representatives convert these bills into law. So coup d'etats are just the recipe for lawlessness. Well, there's no parliament at all. As a matter of fact, they might not even abolish the court systems. But you could see a situation in which the judiciary becomes an unfortunate appendage of the coup plotters. As a matter of fact, they could even sack most of the judges and find one who is malleable and pliable to do the wishes of the coup makers. Fundamental human rights, the right to a fair trial. Now, you can never imprison a man unless he goes through a fair trial, he has legal representation. He is afforded adequate opportunity for his defense, are all abolished.
For a military person to take advantage of the situation and venture into the seat of government and sack government. The Speaker, even though the challenge is about the failure of an economic, the economy and the political system, the unfolding events after the coup often abuse the system, destroys the system, and are even worse than the situation they come to meet. And so essentially, as the Speaker, the maker of the statement has identified, it's embarrassing for the state, it destroys the goodwill of the state, the esprit de corps that exists in the system is also completely destroyed. Mr. Speaker, there is a historical link that brings about coup d'etats in Africa. From independence, we all fought against the colonialists. The challenge was that the colonialists were abusing the system. They were carrying our efforts, our goods and services outside the country. They were destroying everything that was our culture and our nature. And so a struggle began by a group of people who were colonial, who were fighters against the colonial system. So we call them liberating fighters. Mr. Speaker, they fought until they won in many, many countries, and in fact in all of Africa now. The expectation of the Africans was that the leaders of the liberation would then restore peace, security, and development in the nation. And from independence up to the 1970s, we didn't begin to see all the things we fought for. And so coup d'etat started. They started until there was an intervention by the World Bank, because the coup makers themselves needed money, and they needed to go somewhere for money. So they went to the World Bank, the IMF, for money, and then the issue of structural adjustment came into being. One of the fundamental issues about structural adjustment was to say that, look, if you want your government to strive and you want money from us, then you will have to make sure there is democracy in your country. There is free choice, there is liberal economy, and etc., etc. Mr. Speaker, we bought all of them and carried along. And that could be one of the reasons why we are sitting here with the 1992 political dispensation that has given birth to the parliament we have today. Mr. Speaker, so West Africa went through this system, and today, after several countries had recouped from the coup d'etats that happened, we now are beginning to see a new fresh of coups happening. Burkina Faso, as he mentioned, the Speaker mentioned, is a typical case of a repeated coup d'etat within this last 5 years. And that political upheaval there is also translating into other effects in the rest of West Africa. We've got Mali, we've got Guinea, and earlier on, even there was an attempt in La Côte d'Ivoire. The Speaker, these things are not things we should look at with glee. We need to look at them with a lot of pain, because the sovereignty of Africa is subjected now under question. The ability of leadership to transform their leadership ability into the benefits of the people is questioned, and Nkrumah is challenged. He has talked about the black African capable of managing his own affairs. Now, if you come face to face with the former colonialists who now will ask you, you are a black man, you said you wanted to make yourself capable of ruling yourselves, and that you now have power. Have you been able to do it, Mr. Speaker? The answer is definitely no, because of what is going on now. So, but the challenge is about leadership, political leadership, who want to extend themselves beyond their tenures. And it's happening everywhere. In Uganda, classical case of a leader who has extended his rule over and over. Now 36 years in power, he still wants 5 more years. Mr. Speaker, so we need to begin to question ourselves how leadership operates in Africa. And then ECOWAS need to begin to reflect on its own charter. The ECOWAS charter that prescribes democracy as a way of governance and got all of us to sign, all the countries to sign. We now have to question it. If we can't question it, we will not get the way through, Mr. Speaker. So it's important that these statements, when they are made, we reflect very deeply on them and we begin to do something concrete about them. ECOWAS must begin to question leaders today who want to perpetuate their rule, who want to abuse the democratic systems we put in place, who want to extend their lives beyond their life expectation, and who want to abuse the rights of people. If you cannot do that, Mr. Speaker, then there is a high possibility that with the consistent economic failures now sweeping through Africa, more coups will come. But we don't hope and pray so.
You're welcome back from the break. This is Duke's View. It's been an interesting week in Parliament. Of course, the fireworks we're expecting to unfold on the floor of Parliament in relation to the e-levy, and it's going through the pace in Parliament, essentially. Second reading and all of that didn't take place because of for obvious reasons. We had earlier on in the program the majority leader and leader of government business, who, by the way, turned 65 this week. Happy birthday to him, the Honorable Duke Mensah Opoku. He indicated that leaders would have to consult. And for me, I think this is the kind of spirit that we need to embrace in the second session of Parliament. The first session was very chaotic. It was very, shameful to say the least. We saw all sort of unbecoming behaviors and attitudes from members of Parliament. It was roundly condemned by all well-meaning citizens and Ghanaians. The kind of rancor, the kind of bullish attitudes, the kind of spats, the kind of rancor that unfolded on the floor of Parliament is one that was condemned roundly by all well-meaning Ghanaians. And so it is refreshing to note that after the minority sounded a word of caution to the majority to hasten slowly and ensure that they don't take the business of the House while the Speaker is out of the jurisdiction, and that essentially has been heeded to. It shows that this new spirit of consensus building that a lot of people have been advocating for, it looks like it is, seeing the light of day, if I may put it that way. Because I'm sure, and I'm very sure that if the majority had tried to introduce this e-levy in the absence of the Speaker, which would then mean that it would be either the first deputy or the second deputy Speaker who would preside over proceedings, it would have degenerated into chaos once again. So it's good that the leaders are working together and resolving these issues. And I'm hoping that if the Speaker gets back into the jurisdiction, all these issues would be resolved amicably and we'll have a healthy debate, the kind that our Parliament has been noted for, not the one of blows and brushes and fisticuffs, but one essentially at the cerebral level of good points, of points that build nations. Secondly, the issue of the CDD survey. I think it's about time the political parties begin to take a look at the increasing monetization and influence of money in our politics. 4 million Ghana cedis. Of course, I'm sure this would vary across the constituencies, but CDD is a reputable organization. It's a reputable civil society group in this country. And for them to come up with the findings that it costs averagely 4 million Ghana cedis for a member of Parliament to be elected into office, to spend that on campaigning, that's a huge amount of money. At least that can build a number of schools, and to see that is expended, get into Parliament, not because getting into Parliament is not necessary, it is necessary, but it is a veritable way of ensuring that corruption never ceases. Because if I'm going to spend $693,000, if I'm going to borrow, if I'm going to go into some form of an agreement with a financier, and I'll pay that person back in contracts, all this is a recipe for corruption. So it's about time the political parties need to think about this again. The Electoral College is one sure way. The NDC tried it, they abandoned it, they are trying to see if they can go back to it again. And I think a very good suggestion that was put across by Johnson Esedu Ketia, General Secretary of the NDC, about the EC beginning to conduct internal elections for political parties on pro bono basis. I think that's it's a good idea that must be looked at. Probably that could cut down the cost of primaries, and if coupled with the fact that you're advocating for an expanded electoral college, if every card-bearing member in a constituency is voting, they won't buy votes. MPs, you can't pay this about if it's 100,000 members in a constituency, card-bearing members, dues-paying members who are voting. You can't bribe all of them. I think these are the reforms that need to be debated, spoken of at all levels to ensure that there's some level of sanity. Otherwise, very soon, Parliament will become a den of criminals, cocaine dealers, money launderers, and the rest. Because, of course, they will make all the money from illicit activities, pay off delegates, and then come here and be making laws for us. I don't think that's what we want. So it's about time our politics is sanitized and sanitized properly. And on that note, we don't have the curtain on this week's edition of The Chamber right here on Citi TV. My name is Duke Mensah Opoku. Keep watching Citi TV for the very best in programming.